You make a promise to yourself. Tomorrow, I'm stopping this. But a few hours later, you're back to scrolling. Same loop, same regret. And you ask yourself, why am I so weak? The truth? It's not weak willpower. Your brain has just hardwired this pattern into your identity. But neuroscience shows there are 3 specific brain tricks to force quit these loops. Once you trigger them, bad habits lose power automatically. Your brain doesn't care if a habit is good or bad. It only cares about one thing: what feels rewarding right now. You're not fighting the habit. That's why bad habits are so hard to break. You're fighting your brain's dopamine reward system. But you can hack this system. Let's break down the 3 brain tricks to rewire your pathways permanently. Let me tell you one thing. The first and second tricks are powerful, but the third trick is the absolute master key. If you miss that one, the first 2 tricks will completely fail because your brain will stay on autopilot. Let's start with trick 1. Trick 1, the identity disruption method. Most people fail because they try to change behavior directly. They say, I will stop scrolling. I will stop eating junk. I will stop procrastinating. But here's the problem. Your brain doesn't follow commands, it follows identity patterns. If your brain identifies you as someone who scrolls when bored, you will scroll again automatically. And here's why this matters. Because every time you fail after saying, I won't do it again, your brain strengthens that identity. You become more of that person, not less. The willpower approach actually makes the habit stronger. So the first trick is this. You don't fight the habit. You interrupt the identity behind the habit. Instead of saying, I need to stop this habit, you start saying, I am not the type of person who does this anymore. At first it feels fake, but this is where neuroscience becomes powerful. Because when you repeatedly act against an old identity, your brain experiences cognitive dissonance. And over time, it starts updating your self-image. Let me make this simple. If you repeatedly choose discipline over impulse, your brain slowly stops seeing you as an impulsive person and starts building a new default identity. That's the real power here. You're not using willpower. You're using your brain's own identity system against the habit. It's fighting with the grain, not against it. That's how habits actually die, not through force, but through identity collapse. But here's what happens next. You start changing your identity. You tell yourself, I'm not that person anymore. And at first, it feels powerful. But then something hits you. Your brain still craves the old reward. You're sitting there, resisting the urge, feeling like you're white-knuckling through discipline every single day. And that's exhausting, because you're fighting against dopamine, one of the most powerful chemicals in your brain. So changing identity alone isn't enough. You need to rewire what actually rewards you. And that's the second trick. Trick 2, dopamine rewiring switch. Here's something most people don't understand. Bad habits are not about pleasure. They are about dopamine prediction. Your brain doesn't just enjoy the habit, it expects the reward before you even do it. This is why sudden willpower fails. Your brain is already anticipating the reward. When you try to block it with force, your brain fights back harder. That's not weakness, that's neuroscience. That's why you feel automatic urges. So if you try to remove the habit suddenly, your brain fights back. Instead, you do something smarter. You don't remove dopamine, you redirect dopamine. Let's say your habit is scrolling social media, junk food, gaming overload. Instead of going cold turkey, you replace the reward cycle. For example, 10 minutes scrolling immediately replace with walking. Junk food urge replace with water plus small delay. Procrastination replaced with 5-minute action start. Why does this work? Because your brain doesn't care where the dopamine comes from, it just needs a reward. Walking gives dopamine. Water plus delay resets your craving system. A 5-minute start gives you momentum dopamine. Your brain rewires around whatever reward is there, because your brain hates empty reward gaps. If you remove a reward without replacement, the habit returns stronger. But if you replace it, your brain slowly rewires. Same trigger, different reward. And over time, the old habit loses emotional value. You are not killing habits. You are rewriting reward pathways. And this is where most people miss the breakthrough. They think they need to be strong. You don't. You need to be smart. Your brain does the heavy lifting once you redirect it. And this is where real change starts becoming permanent. But here's the problem. Even if you change your identity and redirect dopamine, your brain still has speed. A habit doesn't think, it just reacts. Boredom hits leads to scroll. Stress hits leads to eat. Before you even realize what's happening, you're already doing it. So identity plus rewired dopamine still aren't enough if your brain is running on autopilot. You need to interrupt the speed of the reaction. And that's where the third trick becomes the real difference. Trick 3. The 10-second neural reset. This is the most underrated brain trick. Most habits don't start with action, they start with automatic reaction. You feel boredom, scroll, stress, eat, discomfort, escape. And this happens in milliseconds. Your emotional brain moves 10 times faster than your rational brain. So even if you have the new identity and the new dopamine redirect, if you don't break the speed of the reaction, the old habit wins anyway. There is almost no gap between trigger and action. So the goal is simple. Create a pause between impulse and behavior. Even 10 seconds is enough. Because neuroscience shows when you delay an impulse, the emotional brain weakens and the rational brain activates. So instead of reacting instantly, you do this. Pause for 10 seconds and ask, do I actually want this? Or is this just an automatic pattern? At first, it feels small, almost useless. But here's what happens in those 10 seconds. Your prefrontal cortex wakes up. Your rational brain takes control, and the urge? It loses 80% of its power just by existing for 10 more seconds. That's how fast habits operate, and that's how fast you can break them. But this tiny pause creates something powerful. It breaks the automatic loop cycle. And once the loop is broken even slightly, your brain loses momentum. Because habits are not built on decisions, they are built on speed of reaction. Slow the reaction, break the habit. When you combine all three, identity shift stops the habit from being you. Dopamine redirect makes the old reward worthless, and the 10-second pause breaks the automatic speed. That's the complete system. That's why it works when willpower alone fails. And when you combine this with identity shift and dopamine rewiring, you don't just control habits, you start deleting them from your automatic system. So let's quickly summarize. Trick 1. Identity disruption leads to change who you believe you are. Trick 2. Dopamine rewiring leads to replace reward, don't remove it. Trick 3. 10-second reset, break automatic reaction cycles. And when these three work together, your brain stops running old patterns in the background. Bad habits don't disappear overnight, they lose their automatic power. So here's what actually happened. You didn't just resist a habit, you changed who you are. You rewired what your brain craves. You slowed down your impulses. And over time, you're not someone fighting their habits. You're someone who naturally doesn't want them anymore. That's not willpower. That's not discipline. That's identity reconstruction. And that's what makes change permanent. Because your brain stops running old patterns in the background. Your new identity becomes automatic. Your new rewards become natural. Your new reaction time becomes default. So the question isn't, how do I break this habit? The question is, who do I want to become? Because every small decision is building that identity right now. If you're ready to rewire who you are, subscribe. We break down identity, neuroscience, and real change every week.